Section 28. Putting Fair Housing into Practice. Arizona Fair Housing 101. Every transaction begins with fair housing. Sarah closed the last chapter of her notebook and smiled. I've learned a tremendous amount about fair housing. David nodded. You have. But learning the law is only half of becoming a great real estate professional. Sarah looked puzzled. What's the other half? Applying it. David explained that fair housing isn't something licensees think about only when difficult questions arise. It should become part of every conversation, every showing, every listing, every advertisement, every transaction. When fair housing becomes part of a licensee's everyday routine, compliance becomes much easier. The first conversation. David explained that fair housing begins long before a property is shown. The first phone call, the first email, the first text message, the first meeting. Each client deserves the same professional service, regardless of race, color, religion, sex, disability, familial status, national origin, or any other protected characteristic under applicable law. Sarah nodded. So consistency starts immediately. Exactly. Treat every prospective client the same. Ask every buyer the same qualifying questions. Provide every seller with the same level of service. Consistency is one of the strongest defenses against fair housing complaints. During the property search, as buyers begin looking at homes, they often ask questions that could unintentionally place an agent in a difficult position. Instead of recommending neighborhoods based upon personal opinions, David reminded Sarah to focus on objective information, property features, price, condition, HOA information, commute times, publicly available community resources. The buyer chooses the neighborhood. The agent helps the buyer find the right property. Fair housing responsibilities continue after an offer is submitted. Every offer should be presented objectively and without regard to protected characteristics. Licensees should never encourage a client to reject or accept an offer because of assumptions about the buyer or seller. The contract should be evaluated, not the people. Sarah smiled. That seems to be a recurring theme. David laughed. That's because it is. After closing, David reminded Sarah that fair housing responsibilities do not end at closing. Professionalism continues through possession, post-closing communication, and future client relationships. Clients remember how they were treated long after they forget the details of the transaction. The reputation you build today becomes the business you receive tomorrow. The value of office policies. Sarah asked, what helps brokers stay consistent? David answered without hesitation. Written office policies. Successful brokerages provide fair housing training, establish consistent procedures, review advertising, supervise transactions, and encourage agents to ask questions whenever uncertainty exists. Strong supervision protects consumers. It also protects licensees. No broker expects agents to know every answer, David explained, but every broker expects agents to ask before making a decision that could violate fair housing laws. Protecting the public. David looked around the office. You know what the Arizona Department of Real Estate expects from every licensee? Sarah smiled. Protect the public. Exactly. Fair housing is one of the clearest examples of that responsibility. Every buyer deserves equal access to housing. Every seller deserves honest representation. Every tenant deserves equal treatment. Every landlord deserves professional guidance that complies with the law. When licensees consistently place fairness ahead of assumptions, they strengthen public confidence in the entire real estate profession. Sarah's biggest takeaway. As Sarah gathered her notebook to leave for the day, David asked one final question. After everything you've learned, what's the biggest lesson? Sarah smiled. I thought fair housing was mostly about memorizing protected classes. David laughed. And now? I realize it's really about treating every person with fairness, professionalism, consistency, and respect. David nodded. That's exactly what great real estate professionals do. Fair housing compliance isn't achieved by memorizing laws. It's achieved by building consistent habits. Use the same procedures for every client. Document your communications. Review your advertising carefully. Ask objective questions, and consult your designated broker whenever a fair housing concern arises. Consistency protects your clients, your reputation, and your real estate license. Online discussion question 1. Why is consistency one of the most effective fair housing risk management tools? Answer. Consistency helps ensure every client receives the same professional service, regardless of protected characteristics. Following the same procedures for every transaction reduces the appearance of discrimination and strengthens fair housing compliance. Question 2. How can a brokerage create a culture that promotes fair housing compliance? Brokerages can provide regular fair housing training, establish written office policies, review advertising, supervise transactions, encourage questions, and promote consistent business practices throughout the office. Question 3. What is the most important lesson Sarah learned throughout this course? Answer. Sarah realized that fair housing is more than knowing the law. It requires treating every consumer fairly, consistently, professionally, and with respect throughout every stage of the transaction.